eminent panel speakers for the same are Kanak Gupta, Director, St. M.R. Jaipuria Schools, Delhi; Sandy Huda, Co-founder, Vega Schools, Gurugram; Dr. Amrita Vohra, Director Education, GEMS India and Executive Principal, GEMS International School, Gurgaon; Pratima Sinha, CEO, DSR Education Society, Hyderabad; Geetika Bahuguna, Chief Operating Officer Services, Millennium Schools; and Brijesh Karia, CEO, Singhania Education Service Limited. We welcome you all and we request to start with the panel.
One more speaker, I guess one more speaker is about to come. Okay. So, first of all, thank you so much, Brijesh Karia ji. You have been a wonderful, support to the Adacom Media, a startup venture which has just started 18 months back, and so is the Singhania Education Services Limited. I guess it's just the 17, 18 months or so like the company you have launched this venture. I find my, the chemistry or the camaraderie is matching the growth journey with you and in your leadership. With this 18 months of your existence, and my congratulations and really appreciate your effort that under your leadership almost like 50 plus schools you have onboarded with us, and your coding experience in learning and academic learning apps that you have developed, and this is how you're trying to bridge the gap, and definitely it matches the theme of the event, transforming education through the socio-digital transformation and innovation. All the best and success to your growth and your mission.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. My problem is I'm a teacher by profession. So whenever I wish the class, usually the answer is very loud. So unless I get a loud answer back, I'm not going to start the panel, okay? So let me try that one more time. Good morning, everyone. Fantastic, fantastic. I can't tell you how happy I am meeting and greeting each and every one of you after ages, I must say. The last 18 months have been really, I must say, difficult to begin with, but absolutely eye-opening and phenomenal in terms of innovations. If I were the President of India, believe you me, I would have given every teacher a national award this year. Because one fine day an announcement was made that schools are going to be closed from tomorrow. So that is when majority principals and teachers realized that the buildings are not the school anymore, the children are. And hats off to every teacher. They went out of their way, they went beyond the call of duty. They went online, many of them did not know what technology is, what Microsoft Teams is, or what Zoom is, how do you teach, how do you log in, how do you mute someone, right? So imagine a doctor is asked to do a surgery with 50 people watching him and 50 parents on top of that. That is the job that your teachers have done this year. 50 students watching them and 50 parents watching them simultaneously. I think we should all applaud and give a huge round of applause to the teaching fraternity before we start. The kind of work that they have done is absolutely phenomenal, and no words in their praise would be effusive enough, right? So we have got a wonderful panel here, and the theme today is Education 4.0, unleashing the potential of Education 4.0 and the future of teaching and learning. And believe me, my dear friends, we couldn't have had a better panel of experts to answer those questions. So I give a warm welcome to each and every panelist. Thank you so much for taking out time and coming here. It's been absolute wonderful to interact with all of you, and I'm sure the next 45 minutes are going to be very, very productive for the audience here, right? Okay, so I'll just set the context very quickly. Education 4.0, my interpretation, Version 1 was basically purely based on memorizing, rote learning, out and out. The British system of education, basically to begin with, they wanted clerks across the country. Version 2 was more of explorative studies. A little bit of project-based learning came into India. A little bit of hands-on learning came into India. Version 3, my interpretation was the influx of technology. Tools like Wikipedia, tools like Google, tools like YouTube came into picture. But Education 4.0 is a different beast altogether. Right? And believe me, the kind of capacity it basically possesses to change the education scenario can't be discounted. You must have heard a lot of terms, I'm sure, in the last 18 months. You know, you must have heard about the NEP bringing in a lot of changes also planned as per the government. And so how do we basically inculcate those changes with the help of technology going forward in the education? Because yes, in India, there's a diverse socio-economic background. All schools are not at the same level. Some are in the urban areas, some are in the rural areas. The fees are different, the teachers are different, and of course, the expectations are different. So in a country like India, how do you find a solution which fits all the classes of schools and all the classes of students, you know, which is cost effective, and more importantly, the solution is implementable? That is what we'll try to understand from our panelists today. What are the best practices that they've done in their institutions to help us carve out a path to implement Education 4.0, right? So I would like to start with opening remarks. Mr. Kanak Gupta, over to you, please. I would love to hear the opening remarks from you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Brijesh, for the very warm welcome. I would have probably said the same thing. It's hats off to all the educators present over here and everyone across the world who've done so well. I am so delighted. I cannot tell you, like a child, I've been bubbling all morning to be attending an in-person conference after so long, and you know, really happy to be here. And thank you so much for everyone who came to support the event, and congratulations to the team of Ardacom as well. Right, so we're talking about Education 4.0, and it's very interesting, and it's also very challenging times ahead for us, I feel. When you look at Education 4.0, it's not just about technology, it's also about understanding as to how do you use that technology, or how you use the value adds that you've had, and not just over the last 18 months, but over a very sustained period of time. I'm a strong believer that providing access to high quality education, providing access to learning, providing access to training and development, learning and development opportunities are the cornerstone of everything in our education system. Once we've done that, you will see a sea change. I believe that everything we do has to be sustainable. Essentially, we've done that with our schools. We run about 40 odd schools in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So, you know, typically everyone talks about as to how there have been technology challenges and adaptability challenges. Yes, they've been there, but they've been there everywhere. You know, those kind of challenges have been there in Gurgaon, they've been in upscale, you know, in upmarket New Delhi, Mumbai, everywhere. So it's not as if, you know, everyone's gotten it perfectly. If anyone today tells me that, you know, I've gotten hybrid education and I've nailed it perfectly, you know, I would love to take that person out for dinner and learn more, because I honestly think that I am also on the learning curve for it. So going to the future, you have to look back at the past as to what you've done previously and build upon that. I also believe that there has to be a lot of empathy in the classroom. So it's not important that you use the window which is, you know, on your laptop, on your iPad, on your phone as a classroom, or the physical classroom. The idea is that your pedagogical tools have to be hybrid to inculcate the best of both worlds. Because unless you have pedagogical tools that inculcates both, you will not be able to create empathy. Look, I come from a school and college atmosphere where Amazon, Google were not there. But I don't want to move away from the harsh reality that today's child is living in a world which is surrounded by this. I don't want to create a child or you know, a system whereby children go ahead and only work at these places, but go ahead and create organizations like that. So I feel that when you look at Education 4.0, there's a sea change, there's a bigger challenge coming up, and that is what we as educators need to prepare for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kanak. So wonderful takeaways from what Kanak just shared, that Education 4.0 is eventually not only about technology, but how do we use that to make sure that it is implemented well? And secondly, most important, how do we make students kind of entrepreneurs going forward, where they create beautiful innovations rather than going and working at certain places? Brilliant, Kanak. Great start. Thank you so much. Moving on to Mr. Sandy Huda, we would love to know your opening remarks on the topic, please. Thank you. Sir, we have
Good morning, everyone. I share my colleagues' thoughts that hats off to the educators, hats off to the teachers, hats off to the school leaders. What they've accomplished is unbelievable. And yeah, I mean, President of India Prize is a good idea. I would also recommend a Nobel Prize if there was one in that category. Now, Education 4.0, it kind of brings me back to an advertisement I saw 2 days ago. It's a Shahid Kapoor ad of deodorant Brute, where he's saying that, you know, we are not the kind of company that says that if you put the deodorant on, you'll have a lot of girls coming flocking at you. We're also not the kind of company who makes false claims. He says, and then he goes on to say that this deodorant just smells good and it lasts long. So I think ultimately Education 4.0 is going to be about great teachers. That's the bottom line. I think the biggest issue someone shared at a panel discussion the other day is that in ed tech, there's too much tech and too little ed. I think we need to find ways to bring a lot of ed into tech, and that's going to propel Education 4.0. The bottom line is that I was talking to, we always have the end in mind, and I was talking to the HR head of IBM the other day, and he shared with me that, even skills now are out of the window. We don't talk about 21st century skills anymore. For us, the most important quality or the ability is to be able to find people who can learn very quickly, unlearn, relearn very quickly, because the skills have a shelf life of at the most 1 or 2 years. So I think everything that we do now, right from how we hire teachers, to how we train teachers, to how we construct learning management systems, to how we deliver the curriculum, everything really has to be around that quality, which is at premium and will be at premium in the world of the future.
Thank you, Mr. Sandy. He's put it very, very aptly. Education 4.0 is going to be about great teachers. So until and unless we focus on the drivers of the whole system, professional development is going to be a very important area where I think all the schools will have to put in combined efforts to make sure that our teachers are the best in the business and they can drive this initiative forward. Thank you so much, Mr. Sandy. I move to Dr. Amrita. Hello. So I would love to know your opening remarks on what they have said and what is your take on Education 4.0. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Brijesh, and thank you, Adacom. I'm really glad, and I completely share the feeling that Kanak shared, that, bubbling like a kid, that, okay, I'm going to be finally in a conference live, meeting people who I've been interacting with since a long time now on webinars, where there is too much tech and very little ed very often. And so also in the classroom. No school, I've always said, is better than its teachers. Teachers are the people who really make or break it. Yes, they have done a wonderful, wonderful job. In some cases, probably because any of us as leaders did not have a choice. And in some cases, many of us consciously made those efforts where every teacher felt that, go ahead, try. And I have your back. I'm there. Sometimes we win, sometimes we learn. For the first time, there was an emergency response situation which made us create this scenario where everybody was pushed and tried, and everybody in the system learned. The entire set of stakeholders, from not just teachers but children, parents, support systems within schools, people in the admin teams. I think very few people talk about them in organizations, but during this time, I do remember that my school entire admin team, except for those maybe 1 month of the lockdown when it was complete lockdown, through thick and thin, the entire admin team was always there, because for teachers to make it happen and for all that technology to genuinely function the way it was needed, for each child and each parent to feel supported, and for those queries and sudden concerns to get resolved immediately, that support, the back-end support, was very, very critical and necessary, and that also happened. So we all have it in us. And Education 4.0 is about moving away from a system that was created for the masses. It was what Taylor Gatto called weapons of mass instruction, which are no longer relevant for us. Each child is different, and each child is neurodiverse in so many ways. And we need to be able to really provide for and reach out to each child the way he or she really needs. I think that's where we changed. Yes, hybrid is difficult, even tougher than remote. We all learned remote. Now we are in the zone where we are learning, as Kanak also said, hybrid. Some teachers are able to do it well, but it's a learning curve, and we are getting there. Again, there is no cookie cutter solutions. So there are so many different versions and modes and ways of doing it. But essentially, what we are trying to achieve is to get the best of both worlds together. The classroom has transcended the ideas of space and time, and we need to understand that. It perhaps should always have. We were trying for children to move beyond the here and now, move beyond maybe just the textbook, and so on and so forth. We were always trying. We were always trying and talking about students taking ownership of their learning. This time, they genuinely have. So how successful have we been? How many children are actually thriving when they've or have actually taken ownership and moved in the right direction? How many have just taken advantage of the situation and in fact it's not worked out well? I think a lot of that is very clear to all of us. It's crystal clear, it's out there, it's in the numbers, it's in the data. And the point in time is now for very, very clear evidence-based planning and evidence-based decision making on every front, every aspect of the spectrum. That's what Education 4.0 will be essentially about. And thankfully, technology comes in very handy when it's about data.
Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic. I mean, I think you all are very stingy people. Nobody's clapping their hands. Come on, let's have a huge round of applause. I think, Chandanji, the tea or coffee was not strong enough, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, so basically, I have a wonderful couple of takeaways from that. One is every child is unique. Every child is diverse. So I think customized learning paths is what we'll have to ponder about going forward in the future. And of course, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. That's a brilliant thing, for all the principals. Keep trying new things. Some of them will work. Some of them may not work. However, that doesn't mean we stop trying. Thank you. That was brilliant. Right. Moving to Ms. Geetika Bahuguna. Right, we have had some wonderful inputs, and one thing which has come out very common on the EdTech component, I'm sure I'd like to take that in the questions going forward. Your opening remarks, please.
So I think I would like to first of all, align with your topic. Is for the first time we've been talking about unleashing the potential of a child. The topic says unleashing the potential of education. So what is the purpose of education? I think in the last 2 years, we've actually realized, and we've been thrown into the situation where we had to make a child learn. The teachers did not have to teach. We had to look at the perspective, whether the child is learning in a different scenario, how are we using the different tools which are available, how is technology being effectively used, because from the last 20 years, we have been integrating technology into education. And there has been a huge mindset, and we've realized that teachers knew it is effective. Teachers knew it has to be done. Teachers knew there would be VUCA times, but nobody actually started doing it. So last 2 years, I think it's been a great pilot study for all of us where we have dirtied our hands. We have learned what is it that would work in future, what is it that would not work, what are the skills that the teachers require, what is it that the schools need to do, and how do we reinvent ourselves. So going forth, I think, and no one has to be blamed. Otherwise, generally what happens, people hesitate in taking a new step. People hesitate, pushing people, teachers into the whole game. But here, the biggest change was the teacher mindset. I have been into training and changing mindset. I realized that, and we had this belief that it would happen. But whether it would happen at such a scale, and where they would take charge and they would become the learners and the movers. So I think that has been the greatest learning, and it has created a lot of hope. Because we know that now we can use education with the help of technology to unleash the child's potential in reality. Because personalized learning that we've been talking about, which would not happen, otherwise it's very difficult in a in a classroom where 30 children and you are taking a class. But with the help of technology, with the help of all the tools, teachers were actually going, they were doing one-on-one mentoring sessions with the children, which they realized that now it's open to the parents, it's open to the children, and so I think 4.0 has a lot of scope, but how we use it judiciously. I think that's the bottom line. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. So one thing that I take away from her remarks is very simple, that yes, people are resistant to change. People are hesitant to change, you know. So change management is a very, very important component that we need to focus on, where the goals are aligned, the objectives are clearly laid out for the teachers, and then as a team we approach the whole thing. I think COVID has taught us that. You know, no need to bring about a disruption. The disruption came about on its own. The use of technology, which was seen in the last 18 months, was unbelievable across the country, and we experienced that at Singhania schools as well. Initially, teachers who were very reluctant to use technology had no choice but to go on and do that and learn various facets. So how do you implement change management in schools is something that we all need to ponder about. A very interesting thought. Thank you so much. Moving to Ms. Pratima Sinha, a very, very experienced educator. Your opening remarks, please, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm from Hyderabad and I'm very excited to be here today. And as everybody said, like we jumped to the chance that yes, we need to meet each other. We have been meeting in seminars otherwise. You know, there's an author called John Sieska, and he's written a book, a children's book on the Three Little Pigs. Now, this gentleman has written a very humorous book which says that why do we call the wolf a villain? Why don't we say that, you know, the wolf had an allergy and when he went to the first pig's house, he sneezed so badly that the house, you know, was broken. So this is what we are trying to say, I think all of us, that this particular scenario has changed the perspective of education. And all of us have understood this, that it need not be always the pigs are good and the wolf is the villain. It could be the wolf is actually was going through some experiences. So this is what I remember in 3 years back. Actually, I'd taken up a session with teachers on 4.0 revolution, and I was so excited. I thought I was being very progressive about it. But then within no time, it was there. It was right in front of us, sitting next to us. And that is where, you know, we realize that we cannot really sit back and say that we know everything, we understand everything, and there is no scope next what to do. Because this is where we have actually fast-forwarded ourselves. Education has fast-forwarded themselves. I mean, education has fast-forwarded itself 100 times more. And as everybody has mentioned, that teachers have really progressed. Those teachers who never knew how to use technology are sitting in the corner of their house, in their room, and using technology and teaching students. So this is what 4.0 is about. I'm sure when 5.0 revolution comes, we will be actually in the middle of the robots, and ourselves will be trying to connect. You know, there's a creative which shows the finger of the robo and the finger of the human, the humanoid and the room. So that is what going to happen in 5.0. And when we are talking about 4.0 revolution, we should be prepared for 5.0 revolution too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful, wonderful introduction from all the panelists, setting the context very clearly as to how do they see education 4.0. Right? One thing, however, which comes out very clearly, that yes, teachers are going to be the drivers of the whole system, and teachers are going to be indispensable. You know, so how do we groom them? How do we train them? Because teachers have this inherent fear that if technology comes, I'll be replaced. So how do you address that fear? You know, it's one thing that we as leaders, education leaders, need to very, very strongly look at. Right? So moving to the next set of questions, again back to Kanak. Kanak, you've got 16 plus years of experience in education across the world. What's the recent and the most significant development in education that you have discovered? And to add to that, how important is good leadership in implementing those practices? Over to you, Kanak.
So, Brijesh, just a comment, rejoinder to your previous comment. I genuinely feel that teachers will never be replaced. It's teachers who do not appreciate and you know, take technology as a hygiene factor, they will be the ones who will be replaced by the teachers who have resistance to it. I think that's the whole thing. Like, you know, it's become a hygiene factor more than anything else. I'm personally very bullish on technology, but I also feel that, you know, there is an importance to understand and appreciate the human values as well. So that's a perfect blend that you should be looking at. Right. So coming back to your question, very interesting that, you know, you asked as to what I've noticed over the last few months and years. One of the biggest things I've noticed is collaboration. I'll tell you when, you know, on 23rd of March, when we were told that, you know, stay indoors 2020, and after that, we were all in a race that, you know, I am using Zoom, I am using Meet, and I am using this, and what essentially was happening was, turn off your microphone, switch on your video, and essentially we were imparting those skills. It was only a few months later when we realized that, you know, essentially we cannot replicate the in-person classroom model into an online model, and there has to be pedagogical tools that will enhance the learning capability of the student. Obviously, for all of us, the child remains at the center of the teaching learning process. What I saw was there was collaborations happening across everywhere, be it all stakeholders, right? Like, so between parent and their school, between schools, between teachers across the board, which was brilliant. Now, so from having an IP that this is how I teach in the classroom, or this is the process that my school follows, now suddenly everyone was very open about how you can do this better. And genuinely, when we said that, you know, we are in this together, I saw the fraternity, all of us come together and say that, hey, there is a problem statement, here's a solution. This is a hypothesis that worked for me, and this is a hypothesis that did not work for me. This was something absolutely brilliant. So the fear of the two C words, Corona and COVID, got sort of shelved away with collaboration, communication, connectivity, and it was beautiful. I think, you know, finally the fraternity is coming together where we are saying that we are looking forward to not just 4.0 but beyond. We are looking forward to not just technology implementation in the classroom but beyond. I think that is one of the best things I've seen. The other thing I've seen is, so, you know, very interesting times for all of us, right? Like, so NEP 2020 also came into the view, which talks about learning and development opportunities and mandates a number of hours for teachers. I always want to say this to all educators. You know what? If you're not investing time in talent development, do it now. You know, the best time to do it was 10 years ago. The second best time to do is now. Invest in talent development. Take care of your people. It's a typical CEO versus COO or CFO conversation, right? Like, what if I train my people and they leave? Well, what if you train them, what if you don't train them and they stay? You want them to stay and be groomed. So, this is something I've seen where people have started investing their own time into coaching, into development, and investing time of their organization into development of their teachers, their educators, the non-teaching staff as well. I feel the world is moving faster than we ever imagined. We need to catch up. The human mind is, I think, working faster than most machines. And, you know, we talk about AI, we talk about technology, we talk about so much, but our mind is still working faster. And unless we have the right tools to catch up to our own imagination, we'll be at a loss. And we'll do injustice to this, like, you know, this absolutely garbage can of a situation because of COVID, but it has also given us an opportunity to fast track ourselves. So let's make the best of this absolutely garbage can of a situation, turn it into an opportunity, and move ahead in life.
Thank you so much, Kanak. That was wonderfully articulated, right? So training the teachers, as we've been saying time and again, is going to be very, very critical because they are the ones who are eventually going to implement your vision. Right? So the people who are going to be execute at the forefront are very important that you groom them in the right manner. And that point has been very, very nicely highlighted by Kanak. Thank you so much. Moving to Sandy again. Sandy, we know that you believe that education should not be about delivering one-way, you know, lectures or just making sure that children are passing the test. So what are certain important or good techniques that you implemented at your institution that you would love to share with the audience? You know, something that new or something innovative that you're doing at your school to address this particular point. We'd love to hear from you.
Sure, thanks. That's a great question. You know, we've always believed that form follows function, and somewhere one has to start with the end in mind as well. So, speaking of form follows function, you know, the traditional classroom, the way it's designed, needs to be rethought. You know, the walls need to be broken down, and the reason is that if we want to truly apply a lot of progressive techniques, it's very hard to do it in the confines of 4 walls. So it's not too difficult to break walls down. It's probably harder to build them. So that's one. The second is, you know, we must start with the end in mind. So teachers ultimately will always teach to what is assessed. So the assessment systems need to be rethought. You know, what are the things we are assessing? If we are only assessing content, what we call depth of knowledge 1, the ability to recall something, teachers will teach that. If we are assessing what we call DOK4, which is the ability to use what you've learned, apply what you've learned to find a new or better way of doing something, then teachers will teach that. In order to enable these things, we deploy something called PBL, which is known as problem-based learning. It's often misunderstood for project-based learning, but it's different from project-based learning. So PBL essentially comprises of three methods of teaching and learning. One is inquiry-based learning that has been popularized by IB a lot. So you're essentially asking a lot of driving questions and delivering learning based on that. The second is experiential learning, where you expose learners to a variety of experiences. And the third is, of course, project-based learning, where you learn by solving real-world problems and doing real-world projects. So PBL, problem-based learning, comprises of all three. So we employ this 3-in-1 learning method or methodology that we find very effective. It's not to say it's the only one. There are many very good methods. And finally, it's also very important to, going back to form follows function, or rather function follows form. It's very important to break the walls down, and that's how we can do a lot of one-on-one instruction, small group learning, a lot of team teaching, which is also called cohort teaching. So where 80, 90, 100 learners are being taught by 5 or 6 teachers together across various disciplines. So there are a variety of techniques that we use, and which we find very effective.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So I think we are getting some wonderful views, Just to come back to Kanak, what he said was, while we are talking about the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, cyber security, we must not forget the most important 21st century skills like creativity, collaboration, communication, and of course problem solving, right? And of course, Mr. Sandy mentioned about problem solving. It's a very, very interesting way to look at things, because we are preparing students for the future, for life rather, right? Thank you so much, Mr. Sandy. That was a wonderful input. So moving to the next panelist, we have Ms. Amrita, Dr. Amrita. So ma'am, you've been a CEO for K-12 schools for quite a while, I'm sure, right? You've managed so many educational institutions. What is the biggest innovation that you have seen in the last 18 months? And second question added to that is, now once the schools open up, how different are the children going to be, and how are we as leaders supposed to be prepared for that? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. So there are two parts of your question, and I'll take the first one. Schools have recently opened up. We started with the older children in August, and it's gone on, and now I have my early childhood students also in school. The campus is alive again. There is no school without children. It's really back to what it needs to be again. All said and done, even technology, we are all moving towards humane technologies. That is what is the need of the hour. What I think the biggest innovation is that, apart from understanding everything in technology and doing what was needed, or the emergency response as it was required, and I keep calling it emergency response because certain things were good for that situation, for a crisis scenario. But what blended or hybrid learning really requires is a whole different pedagogical approach. And while there has been so much innovation all around, when you say what is the biggest really is the fact that each one of us as educators, as teachers, have realized that thinking is the one thing that matters. What we are working on is thinking skills. So we are using a whole lot of visual thinking routines. There's a lot of Project Zero study by Harvard also, which has been talking about it, which we've piloted some years back in our schools. And now we are using it the maximum. Because learning to learn, as many of us already said, is the one thing. Change is a catalyst. If there will be no intelligence, if there was no need for change. Somebody very long back said this. So that catalyst is fine, and and change is constant, it will keep happening. And just the pace has become really, really different now. So we need to keep catching up. But the one thing that helps us is the ability to think. When we talk about problem solving, it is very critical also to be able to define the problem first. And in that process comes in empathy. Without that, nothing works. even organizations like Google and Facebook and everybody is trying to see how that can be captured, that emotional intelligence quotient. And the biggest concern is the children have been, especially in our country, have been indoors for way too long. There are all kinds of adjustment issues that they are going through. Very, very simple things. They were one child, center of attraction in the family, everything around him. Now you're back in community, back in school. So there's very simple things have become difficult for children. So we need to give everything else a backseat and put emotional quotient, social quotient, that aspect of learning and being at the center. I think that is what, and reflection, self-reflection. So visual thinking routines again help us with that too. I'll just give you a simple example. Just think of the brain. What color do you think it is? Don't use your scientific mind. Just think of your brain, what symbol would you like to use for it? And what is the image that comes to your mind? Think about it in all these ways, and then we can have all kinds of discussions around what we need to, whatever we need to study or want the child to explore and learn about the brain. That could be vary for each learner, right? But they would begin thinking, and that helps them learn to learn. Metacognition is at the heart of it.
Brilliant. And one just the addendum to that, ma'am, once the students start coming to the schools, how do educators manage that? If you can just throw some light on that as well.
Yeah, so lots to be managed, I think, more than children. Children are very happy coming to school. And they also understand regulations. So when you lay down very clear policies and systems and in place, they understand and they're happy to follow. It is the parents who are anxious.
Perfect.
It is the adults who are, all adults in the system actually, whether it is the planners or the educators or the, you know, the guard and the admin guy, everybody is anxious. Right. So it is this that needs to be, first of all, tackled with lots of grounding in the vision and very clear planning, that everybody, right from the security guard at the gate to every single person, has to have the same language, same theory, same practice, and that's what works. And yes, hybrid models have worked very well, and yes, for every age group, things are different, and based on the pedagogy we are utilizing, we need to have systems in place that work for everybody, and that's how we've been managing.
I think this is going to be a very important component. Once the students come back to school, you may find that they are emotionally different. Many of them have not left their homes for the last 15, 18 months. They've not made new friends. So you'll find a lot of them are feeling, introverted or shy. So I think the teachers will have to play a huge role going forward here, I guess, in interacting with the students.
Yeah, I just will share one little thing.
Sure.
Just a couple of days back, my grade 1s and 2s have started coming to school. So this kid in grade 2, the teacher was taking them for a school tour because they're not familiar with the campus.
Right.
They've been in school, but they've been online.
Right.
So this child just looks at me. I know you. You know, when I last came to school, I was in KG 2. Now I am in grade 2. I just want to move around and feel every part of this place. This grade 2 kid he said everything that we are all feeling.
I think the children are going to bring the enthusiasm back to the schools and to the teachers, of course, goes without saying, right? Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Moving to Ms. Geetika. Ms. Geetika, as a CEO, what has been the most difficult aspect from a terms of an infrastructural perspective? While we talk technology and all is pretty good, but as I said, getting it implemented on the ground is a huge challenge. So what is the challenge that you faced? And second, what initiatives have you implemented to ensure that the information is passed on to all the stakeholders? When I say stakeholders, I'm counting the parents as well. Because usually we focus more on students, and as ma'am said, that parents are also the ones who are, very anxious, or they are the ones who feel, missing out on these particular things. How do you address all the stakeholders once the schools reopen, ma'am?
So basically, looking at the technology, looking at our schools, a little background about our schools are based, they're very focused on skill development through a very robust curriculum. That had been our USP, and where technology was integrated. Now, when pandemic happened, we realized that everything had to be turned, and it became technology-driven education. For that, we were not prepared. And in that, what you required is like while we had a ERP system where we had management system and processes in place, we had a teacher portal in place, but we did not have a student portal because everything was done experientially in the class using the 5E, like, our problem-based approach. The minute pandemic happened, our biggest challenge was how do you get this piece in place? So there were 3 challenges. One was how do you create a student portal? And second was how do you how do you create a platform where they can do virtual teaching because teachers were not used to it. Third was how do you get an access of technology with, at home because schools were equipped, but homes were not equipped of parents as well as of the teachers as well as the students. So the first we worked on, looking at, we got the teachers, like the spirit of collaboration. All our teachers got together, they created videos, we created a student portal within a period of about a month, and we continued, so teachers kept, we used all our school's resources. Second was training the teachers. We got in touch with Microsoft, and we got the platform, and the teachers got trained, and the training continued. And the third is how do you get an access to quality devices? Because you may have the works, you may have a fantastic curriculum, but if the child is operating using a phone or the teacher is operating using a phone, the quality of learning that we are talking about doesn't happen. So technology has to be not only in the school, but in the home. So for that, we started sensitizing parents. The parents had to be sensitized, the schools had to be sensitized, they had to be, the whole aspect of focusing on equipping the children and the teachers. Now the second question, and this is a challenge which is we are still addressing, it's not over. Because now we're in the hybrid mode, our schools have to be equipped, every classroom has to be equipped with a hybrid curriculum because 50% children are coming, 50% are not coming. How do we get this entire infrastructure? And because we are working on a franchisee mode, so we need to influence the partners, we need to change their mindset, then we need to change the mindset of the teachers, and then skill set, And the second question, you said, what were
the parents? How do you keep involving the parents from time to time? I think you've already addressed that.
So
right.
we have tied up partnerships
Right.
because we feel there are certain things we can do ourselves, which we are very strong on. The others are there's so much, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are partners available, there is technology available. We have to identify and collaborate. Collaborate with people who are giving the best solutions and then integrate it into our system. And thereafter the training, because you have to then continuously train the teachers, which will continue because there is a huge gap in terms of the quality of learning which is happening on the ground. We may talk about a number of things, what we are doing, but actually when you assess, so we also tried assessment of how well the children were learning, but not how much, because the focus shifted from, teaching the curriculum to helping children learn concepts. Now that is a huge issue which has to be worked upon.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that wonderful input. Moving to Ms. Pratima, a very important question, something that is personally very close to me. The importance of holistic education. While we talk about academics all the time, subjects like, arts, music, dance, how do we incorporate them as a part of the curriculum, ma'am? And how do you make that as a part of the teaching learning pedagogy? If you can throw some light on that, ma'am.
So that's become very important when we need to integrate the core scholastics into the curriculum. In fact, now we are talking about interdisciplinary skills and also integration of subjects. So our curriculum, actually we have integrated, in fact, if you see our school's website, it showcases very clearly how a topic in science is integrated with art, with music, with dance, with theatre, and also with life skills. So that has become actually our teachers, all of them for that matter, whether it is the dance teacher or the music teacher or the art teacher, they sat together and they devised the whole curriculum. And actually it is really happening extremely well, even though we have online classes, all the integration is happening to the T. So it has really worked out well. and we will continue doing so, because that's where, you know, a child who may not be good in math, but he's learning the concept through dance, he's learning the concept through music. He may be good in music, or he may be good in theater. I mean, theater has become like a lifeline. I'm a theater person, and I know how much theater gives that kind of confidence to the child to stand on the stage and lose the inhibition that the child may have to stand in front of people. So theater actually for me has become very important part of it, and everywhere we try to integrate theater into the topics wherever possible, and it's really, really working well. I can see the confidence level in the students when they speak, when they talk, even if you give them extempore topics, the magazines that they're coming out with, the topics that they are choosing, it's all because of what we are integrating, the co-scholastic and the, you know, the other subjects. So it's really worked well. Even their language skills have improved, actually.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
brilliant. I think many of the schools that I've been seeing on ground have been implementing this, because I've been talking to a lot of students of late. I tell them, what do you want to become? I get some very interesting answers. Say, I want to be a YouTuber when I grow up. I want to be a playwright, I want to get into theatre, I want to be a musician, I want to be an RJ. Very fantastic answers, and I think the schools should encourage these things, you know, these particular areas where the students can basically, as Madam said, lose their inhibitions and come into their own. That was really fantastic.
Mr. Brijesh,
So-
can I add on? I forgot about it.
Sure.
Actually, I'm also doing theatre with autism. This theatre therapy is an alternative therapy to teach children with autism, and it's working extremely well. So it's music as well as theatre, both combined together. We can see massive change. I've seen dramatic change in the students who have autism. And I know for sure that every school, whether principals agree or not agree, they have children with autism. So I would say that, you know, and I like to speak always about this on a platform, because I feel that we need to spread this message.
Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic, great initiative. Thank you so much. All right, so I'll take last 5 minutes, one question each to all the panelists. You'll have exact 60 seconds to answer every question. You can't take more than that. It's kind of a rapid fire, right? So Kanak, if you were made the Education Minister of India, what is the first change that you would like to bring on the ground? You have 60 seconds. Time starts now.
I decline the offer. I don't want to be the education minister of the country. But I can be an advisor to the education minister, and I can be very forceful, I know that. So the first thing I would do is focus on the basics. I think it's important that, you know, when we look at education 4.0, let's look at 1.0 and 2.0 and do the basics right. Essentially ensure that students are inquisitive again. They're curious again. They ask questions. They can read, write. They have a sense of understanding that it's not just content that they need to learn beyond content as well. I want to focus my attention on development of teachers. I want to make parents true partners in the teaching learning process. I think the basic purpose of everything that we do is the economic development of the country. So for that, we need to ensure that the society as a whole grows. I think my 60 seconds are up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a brilliant answer.
Can I
And
add on
see-
to what Kanak said?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is, I remember there was a long time back, there was an ad by Maruti Cars. And it says discount for engineers, discount for doctors, discount on buying the car for army, services. So I actually wondered why there is no discount for the teaching staff, why there's no discount for the education field. So I would like
they are the
to
ones
add
who
on to
created
that,
them.
that please add the education. Everywhere you see, teachers are still not they're
Ma'am-
not treated in that
Ma'am, I have an
category
answer
of
for
others.
that.
Yeah.
Because we as a teaching fraternity, we don't make that much money, no, ma'am. So no one will offer us discount. They know we'll not be able to afford it any which ways.
But at least they should give the discounts to them, right?
Hopefully that day will come soon as well, ma'am. All right, moving to Mr. Sandy. Mr. Sandy, you've given $1 billion to implement in the education in India. What is that one area that you would like to invest that money? I know the situation is going to be hypothetical, so please don't mind me.
No, I think that's, for me, it's fairly simple. It's, I would start again with the end in mind. I would try to map the competencies that the real world is looking for. I would spend a lot of time and effort and money in mapping those competencies. I would map the good values that a good nation needs for nation building. And then I would spend all this money to identify and train teachers who can have these good values and competencies so that they can develop them in their learners.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Moving to our next panelist, ma'am. If you were to go back into past and change one education practice which shouldn't have been implemented in India, what is that you would love to change?
I would want to bring back our Gurukul system to our country. It was one of the most evolved systems. It had everything. Inquiry was built in, problem solving was built in, and there were 6 layers of teachers. The Drishta being one of the top ones, and Adhyapak, the lowest layer, only imparting knowledge. The highest being the Guru, who was basically all about just inspiration. Right? And I'll not go into the details because we're supposed to stick with 60 seconds.
Yes.
And I think
because we are teachers, ma'am, we're trying to lose track of time.
we can, if we can make children able to think critically and move beyond and really identify the sea of information, the disinformation and misinformation they're living in, and really make sense of it.
Perfect.
That is what they
Perfect.
need.
Thank you so much. Ms. Gitika, I'll just flip the question for you. If you had a chance to go 100 years into the future, what is one practice that is you will make sure that it is implemented across all schools as a compulsory, as mandatory practice? What is one thing that you would love to see in the future in India?
100 years.
Yep. Let's say 50 years, 100 years into the future. One practice that you feel will benefit all the schools going forward.
I think the ownership has to be with the child. The learner has to realize, and he needs to be accountable for his own learning. Now, how you orchestrate that is, I think I'll leave it. But the focus has to be the learner has to realize the need and he has to learn.
Perfect.
Simple.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Moving to Ms. Pratima. Ma'am, if you are made in charge of implementing the NEP in India, what is the first segment or sector that you would look at? That, okay, this is very critical. If this is good, I think everything else falls into place slowly.
Yeah, so I've already spoken about it. When we talk about interdisciplinary skills, I would really like to implement that, and the no bag stay. Because that's where I feel, the child needs to just leave his bag behind and do something different, do something new. And also the different choices that the child can get. Right now, we don't provide those kind of choices to the students, but with NEP coming in, I hope that the choices that the child can have on different subjects and the skill subjects that are being introduced would be also wonderful. So these are the things that I would definitely like to implement, and I will move away from Bloom's taxonomy and I will move towards Fink taxonomy that I would like to share.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think all the panelists deserve a huge round of applause. Right? Our time's up. I'll take 1 more minute if the audience has any questions. We'll take only 2 questions. If the audience has any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer. I think ma'am has a question here. So ma'am, if you could name the panelists and then the question. Sure, absolutely ma'am. You can go ahead with the question. Ma'am, in Indian classrooms, one student has to start. Then the others chip in.
The
It's
one
pretty
who
normal.
has to start is always, the one who's, told later, तेरे को ही time मिला था पूछने का.
Ma'am, you must have been a very good student in the school as well. Okay, ma'am, sir, homework कब लेने वाले हो? Something of that sort. Please go ahead with your question.
I'm
and
sitting in
address
front
to-
right now also, so I would like to ask all the esteemed panelists that we are all talking about how teachers have developed. We are all talking about how education has moved by leaps and bounds in the past 18 months. But I would also like to ask you that we can see that the children have suffered a major cognitive loss. They have gone back at least 3 years. When they come back to the classroom, we, as a teacher in practice, I know inside that my child is not doing well because I am teaching well. The child is probably doing well because he or she has technology at his or her disposal, which he or she can easily make use of. So, how all of you, as experienced and as wonderful educators as you all are, what do you suggest should be done to bring children back or to fast track that process of covering up for the cognitive loss that our children have suffered.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, which panelist would love to take that question? Anyone of you? Yeah, sure.
So I think I've been very, I believe really strongly that, what is it that the child has lost? Is I think we need to have a focus very right. What he's lost is the socio-emotional connect. And what he's lost is the zeal and the happiness or the cheer to learn. I think that is what we need to focus on, not about what is the syllabus, what is the content that the child has lost, irrespective. Because the children, I think, our schools actually are suffering because we focus so much on the content and not on the process and not on the child and helping him learn the skill to learn. If you teach him that, if there is joy in his coming back to school, he will learn. He just needs the motivation, he just needs the inspiration. So I'm so glad you asked that question because I keep telling that to all the teachers, don't worry. Let the children be happy and you should be happy.
So a happy child is always an interested child. I think the time's up. I'm sorry we'll not be able to take any more questions. Thank you so much to all the panelists. You guys have been wonderful. I think they deserve a huge round of applause. And to conclude, I would say when you're having tea or coffee, all you do is put cubes of sugar in that. They've done that for you today. Until unless you stir it and implement those things, nothing's going to work on the ground. So it's important that the leaders take this back with them, these thoughts, and make sure that how much of it can you implement is up to you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you all the eminent panel speakers. We would like to request Sir Brijesh Karya to come forward and present our guest with the momentum of appreciation. First, we have Ms. Kanak Gupta. Next, we have Mr. Sandy Huda. Next, Dr. Amrita Vohra. Next, we have Pratima Sinha ma'am. Next, we have Geetika Bahuguna ma'am. Now I would request Pratima Sinha ma'am to come forward and please present the momentum of appreciation to Mr. Brijesh Karya, sir. Thank you so much, everyone.